the way the way I work is I'm able to see lots of dots of information, and slowly, I have to be patient, allow the picture to start forming. Okay.
So, well, it's great to see you.
Yeah, good to see you as well.
I'll give you a brief introduction, I guess. Nigel Patterson is a dear friend of mine. We've known each other for several years, and he's been a mentor to me. He's been a mentor to tons of people, actually. And a few years ago, wrote a book, Return to Freedom. And there's a lot of stuff in here that I guess the range of the book is fairly wide, but you also wrote it a few years ago, and some books are a really powerful message for the time that they are written, and some have a more general message. And so when you talk about your return to freedom, is that something that you feel like has happened, or are we still in the middle of that? Is the book still relevant, I guess, is my cheeky way of saying it.
All right. Well, the book was published in 2018. So it was written around about 2017 into 2018. And that was pre-COVID. As I've indicated before, and I say I was the co-author of the book, the main author being Spirit. And it was written in Hawaii when I lived there. And the information was basically downloaded to me from the guides, the kahunas in Spirit there in Hawaii. And I didn't really, not all of it made sense to me at the time. And I kind of argued away with it, and they just told me to write it, be done with it. I said, okay. And there's a model in there called the Path to Freedom model, which I happen to have a little copy here, which is this thing here. And that is in the book, and the book really talked about that. And I wanted to do it differently, and the guide said no, and we argued, and they won. And I didn't really know why at the time. So I thought it was like a personal journey, which it is a personal journey as well when the book was written in 2018, and many people have read it as a personal journey. However, I can see now, looking back, why it was written then. Is more relevant today than then, because we're going through a collective journey as a collective consciousness, and we're each just parts of that collective consciousness. And so the whole process, and we hear, the term, the whole thing, the whole time happening about, what do you call it, the grand awakening or the great awakening or something, we hear that being thrown around. The book is about awakening to your freedom, awakening to the matrix, and how the matrix controls and manipulates us through fear-based conformance and compliance. And of course, the COVID pandemic, the only way they got away with what they got away with is through fear-based conformance and compliance, where we're totally separated. So in the model, by the way, you've got where are we? The one hand, conformance, compliance, fear-based stuff at the bottom down here, separation. And the two coming together in here is what I call the matrix. And by having this lockdown going on at a global level, separating us from our true essence of who we are, these sovereign beings, and the fear-based conformance compliance, we were shoved brutally and ruthlessly into the matrix. And that was the intention of what was going on there. So I actually, when I look back at this work, I see that was a warning to humanity of what was about to come. At the time, I didn't know that. I thought it was just a nice personal journey, and we can all learn from it, which by means, of course, we can. But in hindsight, it is far more relevant for the great awakening we're going through today than what it was when it was actually written in 2018.
So I want to back up a little bit about the your writing process. So when you say guides, just for the people listening, what do you mean by that?
Spirit guides. In this instance, it was mainly in Hawaii. We have what's called kahunas, which are the wisdom keepers, the ancient ones, and they are in spirit, passed over, their souls. And there's certain places in Hawaii, the place of refuge, city of refuge on the west side of the island where you are, where that energy is incredibly strong and almost palpable. And those who are sensitive to it can almost feel the energy on their shoulders and around their heads. And that was sitting in there, and they hold that wisdom. It's the indigenous wisdom, the native wisdom, the earth wisdom, whatever you want to call it. But they're not of headspace like we are in the West. So that wisdom was coming through. And of course, me being an ex-engineer in headspace stuff, I was arguing away with them. And the message was just write it as we're giving it to you and just stop arguing. So I said, okay.
So did you feel like you went to them for the inspiration, or were you drawn in?
Good question, that. I had a strong sense I had to get this written down and out. I didn't know why that sense was there. It was basically, call it a calling, if you wish. And I didn't really know why, but it was just get it done. And because this is an accumulation of probably about 30 years worth of work went into that book. So there's a lot of, because my own mentors and teachers have been very much in the indigenous wisdoms and the shamanic traditions, and then also the transpersonal world as well. So there was like, just get this work done. It has to be out. And what it wasn't even, I couldn't even really negotiate that. It just had to be done. It's that sense of knowing.
So when you say that they were very insistent with you, how would you describe that? Like these, you're hearing whispers in the night, you can't sleep?
No, not quite. It was a sense of feeling very unfulfilled if I wasn't working on this.
Okay.
It was again going back to the model where separation is down here, meaninglessness, purpose is up there, and it was a sense of get on purpose, fulfill your purpose. Spirit is driving that. That's what you have to do right now. Maybe something later will come up, but for now, that's what you have to do. And that sense of purpose was so strong. And as you know, that Hawaiian word kuleana, and how I interpret that word is we need to find our purpose in life. And when we find the purpose, we have both a duty and a responsibility to fulfill that purpose. And that concept to me is what kuleana means, that word. So I had that sense of purpose. I needed to do this. And with that, I had the responsibility and duty to actually fulfill that. So it was my kuleana to get this work out. And I didn't fully know why, it just had to be done. But in hindsight now, I know why.
Why?
It's a warning for the awakening of the world. The warning that if we do not collectively wake up, well, we've entered that point of collective crisis, and the events of the last week have really brought that crisis right up into the awareness right now. If we don't collectively wake up, we will be pushed back into that place of the matrix. And this is an opportunity we have right now to claim that sovereignty for ourselves and to question everything that's out there, the whole way the matrix is being constructed, the construct, and it's collapsing rapidly, the narrative and the media.
Just because this episode will be released not today, but in the future, give context for everybody. In this last week was the assassination attempt on President Trump, and just this yesterday, Biden got COVID. And so the two front-runner presidential candidates are recovering from a wound or an illness. This is a very unprecedented situation in American politics. So
yeah, and I think which goes with that is the media are rapidly losing control of a narrative. And as this control of the narrative being the dream of the matrix, is unraveling, they've been seen for what they are. That they've been spinning a story to keep us in that place of control, conformance, compliance, separation. As of this date, which is what we were, July the 18th, 2024, as far as I can see as a seer, it's not clear how this is going to unfold. However, what's very clear is that there's going to be something unfolding.
Mm-hmm.
And for us to take responsibility at a very personal level for staying in the place of discernment, of awareness. Don't get caught up in the media hype. Don't get caught up in the drama of it. But just ask many, many, many questions without trying to answer them, and have that awareness there and just allow it to unfold as it needs to unfold.
Yeah. So I want to again circle back for a second to the guides. When you talk about people being kind of drawn back into a matrix, where do the guides sit in relationship to this like awareness structure that's holding people's attention?
My understanding is that we as a human race have free will. And it's up, and while the guides can, it's called a knock of spirit, can be knocking away, saying, we're trying to awaken you, we're trying to bring this awareness to you. However, through free will, whether we choose to answer that knock of spirit or we choose to dismiss it. The guides will not force or impose anything upon us. That's not their role. Their role is to support us in our awakening. Having said that, I specifically said as humans, there's also becoming quite clear now and quite evident there's a strong non-human element on this planet as well, which are causing a lot of mischief. And that's what we are being asked to wake up to, is this manipulation going on. And call it the dark and call it the light, whatever terms you want to use, doesn't really matter. But there is this other element which have been controlling the narrative, controlling, let's call it humanity, for a very, very long time, centuries, thousands of years. And that's being exposed incredibly rapidly at the moment.
So there's an opposing force to the guides that were working with you that are maintaining a matrix-like structure to control humanity?
I think since we're using the Matrix as the metaphor, the movie itself shows it very nice. The Agent Smiths versus the Neos of the world. And there's many, many Neos awakening. I wouldn't say we're equal numbers to the Agent Smiths now, but we're really getting there. And that's terrifying to the Agent Smiths, using that metaphor. The Agent Smiths, if you want to call it that, these bad guys, the best we're seeing is it is AI, not AI generated, but AI controlled. And hence the whole concept of our AI is coming into our awareness so rapidly and is trying to be normalized far quicker than what I've seen anything else happen. Who is trying to normalize AI and why are they trying to normalize it? For what purpose? Those are the questions I say. Just keep on questioning. Who benefits from AI?
Well, it makes your job easier. You get replaced. No? I mean, I see it's a buzzword. So everybody who wants to feel relevant is adding AI. It's like AI dog walking, AI coffee, AI, just everything.
Yeah. And I want to just point that out as well for whoever's watching or listening to this. As an electrical engineer, my background, and I did engineering a long time ago, they used to be called control systems. They used to be called expert systems. They used to be called programs. Like in your vacuum cleaner, your little CPU. That's not AI, for heaven's sakes. Everything is being labeled AI. We're trying to normalize everything to an AI label. That's absolute rubbish. But we're falling for it. And that is the stupidity of humanity, which we have to awaken from. And it's a great awakening. So the Matrix is trying to pull us into normalizing the concept that everything is AI with a computer chip in it. That's, we're having this interview here or this conversation here using technology. This is not AI. This is you and me talking to each other.
Yeah, that's something that I find a little bit irritating about the worship of AI myself, because as humans, we are prone to spontaneity, and And when people see things generated by AI, they think that it's like this magical, spontaneous intelligence, artificial. Obviously, that's what AI stands for. But what they're not accounting for is that the whole thing about AI that a lot of people that you hear in the news that a lot of people don't really understand is what they're doing is they're taking enormous amounts of data. So these AI models, they're training it on data. So all they're really doing is they're making the outputs much more detailed and just adding a lot more depth to it because they're putting more data in, and it's just another calculation. So there's no spontaneity to it. It's not the creative manifestation that everyone seems to think it is. It's like, just because you didn't see what happened in that box doesn't mean it wasn't just a calculation.
No, absolutely. And I, while I absolutely agree, humans by nature are a curious species. We're very curious, but we have one flaw even greater than that, and that's laziness. We're extremely lazy. So we're not taking responsibility for thinking, why are we giving this data away? There's no such thing as a free lunch in this world. We know that. It's energy exchange. We're giving our energy away. To whom and for what purpose? We're not taking responsibility for that. We're too damn lazy. And maybe I'm being callous here, I don't know, but I actually, if people want to be lazy, they need to deal with the consequences of their laziness. They can't hide behind, I did not know anymore. That doesn't cut it anymore. There's too much awareness out there. It's like, oh, I knew about it, but I didn't care. I thought it was cool. Oh, I thought the avatar little image on whatever it is platform I'm looking at, it makes me look really handsome or really gorgeous.
Oh, right.
It takes away my wrinkles and my gray hairs. Okay, so the ego is what you're trading in for giving all your information away. Take responsibility, because there's consequences for that. And people aren't thinking that far. And it's not very hard to make that leap. It's really very, very close, but they're not doing it.
Well, I in the defense of a lot of people, I'll say that while they're aware of these things because it makes the news, I think that the lack of comprehension of it makes it. So, for example, when I give people financial advice, I'll tell them like, oh, you should take advantage of an IRA because it's a tax benefited, it's meant to help you save money for your future, blah, 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 blah. And as soon as you start talking about that stuff, I'm not using a different language, but you see people kind of gloss over, it's like, oh, that sounds complicated. I believe you, I'm not going to get involved. And so I wonder if it's, there's an element of laziness because you have to put some work in to figure out like what's really going on here. But I think that's intimidating. Like, people don't necessarily want to be subject to, people being like harvesting their data, but at the same time, yeah, well, I guess that's a good way to put it. It's just lazy. They don't want to. It's an intimidating endeavor, though. That's. I guess.
But I think you also bring up another interesting point here. Is if we go back to what the guides gave me on this model, there's that separation that we, through social media, have become separate entities. You're sitting there in Hawaii, I'm sitting here in Mexico. Sure, we've got technology here, but we're feeling very separated from how we used to behave in the past. People would go to the village square, their commune. Now we sit on WhatsApp, or we sit on, I don't know, Facebook or Twitter or whatever it is, X now. And we think we're having a community. We're not. We're just having a bunch of electronic communications going on, and we're presenting a face we'd like others to see. And AI, I believe, or not AI, but the architects behind all of this is not by accident at all. It's saying that because we're social creatures, we want to be seen, we want to be interacted with. Well, how can we do this? Oh, cool, this thing called AI. It's going to make me look cool, and I can actually create this whole thing. So what you say is right in that it's not necessarily laziness totally. It's also a need to be seen. It's a need to interact, a need to socialize. But I still think we need to take responsibility for how we're going about that.
Hmm. So there was something else that you had said regarding the mainstream media narrative, and I had a conversation with my dad about this, where he was getting all riled up about something, and I was like, that's not true. You got to get better news. And he goes, well, where do I get better news? And so, well, I read a lot of financial news because my opinion is everyone's got something to say until it costs them something. So when you're talking about money, people that money doesn't make people honest. Let's be clear about that. But financial reports are audited, right? So if you want to look at the health of the economy, looking at financial reports from businesses is going to give you a better idea than some politician's statement about how they've done a great job for various minorities. So when you assess the state of the world, I mean, because you don't know everybody, right? You know a small group of people, but when you're looking at the collective consciousness and where it's at in relationship to where it's going, how do you gauge that?
The best I can say, it depends which part of you is filtering that information. If it's the mind, you're going to have a certain interpretation. If it's a heart, it could be something quite different. Again, the gut. So going back to the news, it was when we were living in Hawaii, we actually switched off all news for about 3 months completely. We're getting so wound up, hating on people we were told to hate on by these talking heads, yapping heads, and we believed them. Why wouldn't we? We were wound up. There was a narrative. They fed us. It was like we're having this dopamine high going on the whole time. Yeah. So right. Let's hate this person. Let's hate this person. Fantastic. I feel so righteous about hating.
Yeah.
Hang on. What's going on here? How can there be righteousness and hate? Surely I can get my dopamine hit some other way. So we just switched it off. I know it's going to be really, really hard with an election coming up now to do that. But luckily there wasn't an election coming up, so we could just switch it off. It was a post-election at the time. And after about 3 months, we had calmed down. It's actually quite nice. We switched the news back on again, the same channels. I thought, seriously? We were actually watching this stuff? We actually bought into this narrative? Are you serious? And we realized this is really, really toxic and really easy to get sucked into it. And from there, I haven't allowed those boundaries formed through those 3 months to be infiltrated. They still hold very strong. So I'm able to watch all the different narratives and use the heart and the gut with some using discernment of the mind to look at this and say, okay, what's going on here? And oftentimes I haven't got a clue. What I do know is what the narrative out there is telling me makes absolutely no sense. It's complete nonsense. Makes no sense at all. So I have no idea what the truth is, but I know it's not that. Let me just back off. I don't need to know the truth all the time in the moment. I'm okay being in the unknown. It's actually okay being in the void. And there's peace in that. There's a lot of peace in that.
Are you getting news, and I'll use this word loosely, but are you getting news from your guides?
They very much, there's yes, partly that answer, but very much also they make it my responsibility, as they always do, to go and find information and then sit in the question. And sitting in the question without judgment is when that guidance comes through. Okay, does that make sense? Or do I need to explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, go a little bit more.
Okay. It's very easy to switch, look at the news either on, your iPad or on the TV or whatever this thing is anymore, and get sucked into it and then become the keyboard warrior and pretend that you're actually this expert. It's very, very easy, and most people do that. Just follow the Facebook threads or the X Twitter threads. as opposed to saying, okay, this information is sitting there, these narratives are there. Let me just sit with those narratives. Let me just slow down, maybe the next day in the meditation or whatever it is, to say, okay, how does that feel? Not what do I think about it? What is my visceral reaction, but how does that feel? And in that feeling is when the guides will come in and bring, let's call it that layer of wisdom into it, as opposed to just knowledge from the TV or whatever it is, or the threads.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that, often the information that comes through is in more questions or in riddles. I've got to sit with it. And the way I work is I'm able to see lots of dots of information. And slowly, I have to be patient, allow the picture to start forming. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to seeing a dot and saying, well, that dot is the whole picture. It's just a dot. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. You need all the pieces. Sometimes the cover of the jigsaw puzzle is shown. More often than not, it's not, because that's personal responsibility, is saying, figure out what this actually means and use discernment and your guidance on this, and the picture will inform.